Today I'm going to do a very high level, this is purely an intro to this topic because there's so much to talk about and I want to talk about it a lot. So we'll get to that rather than do a 3 hour screencast here. But I want to talk about EOS. I've been watching every moment of the EOS launch over the last few days, trying to get myself into every conversation I can, and it has been fascinating. So, the topic I want to talk about today, again, just an intro to the topic, is the EOS Constitution. There's a lot to say here, but I mainly just want to introduce the idea that there is a constitution for EOS. Now, constitution is a word that generally we just hear in public school when we learn about American history, but let's talk about constitution. We also learn as the law of the land, the ultimate law of the land. This is the basis of all agreement, right? In law, we call it legal agreement, but it's just agreement. When you sign a contract with someone, you're agreeing to, I'm going to give you this and you're going to give me that, right? I'm going to provide you this service and you're going to give me this amount of money. That's all law really is. It's the agreements that people have agreed to make with each other. EOS, being a smart contract platform, needs a basis of defining that agreement. So this is the GitHub page. I'll link this in the description. This is the constitutions, the ultimate, the core foundational set of rules that people agree to when they interact on the EOS platform. Now, you agree to function by this constitution just as an outcome of the fact that you own EOS tokens. Now, how that gets communicated to people who own tokens and interact with smart contracts and all that, that's another whole fascinating topic that I will get into, but I've actually got more study myself to do before I can have that conversation. But I just want to introduce you to the idea that this is here. Some of the ideas here are, it's incredibly simple, right? It's a 2.5 page-ish document, and this is outlining, like I said, the core agreements that people make or agree to make with each other as they interact through smart contracts on the platform. The concepts that are represented here, the economic and political principles that are represented in here, some of them are really well historically founded. These are foundational ideas from law, from politics, from economics. Article 1, we start off with, members shall not initiate violence or the threat of violence against another member. Lawful prosecution of crimes with the goal of preserving life, liberty, and property does not constitute initiation of violence. Now, this is a core tenet of U.S. law, but it's not in our Constitution, right? Life, liberty, and property is in, I actually don't know if it's the Constitution or the Declaration. That's a fundamental idea for Americans, obviously, but initiation of violence, that sounds like an extreme term because of how we normally use the word violence, but violence in legal terms or in legal philosophical terms is the use of force. The idea in a free market is you don't use force. You don't get to beat somebody else's money out of them. You have to provide a service, and they have to agree to exchange their money for your service. Right? That's a voluntary, non-violent interaction. And voluntarism is the core of a real free market. So here we have as Article 1 in the Constitution for EOS, nonviolent interaction. And this applies to contract again. It's a smart contract platform. In the contract, the idea of nonviolence also involves the idea, the legal idea, that you represent yourself honestly in a contract. If you say you're going to provide X, you provide X. If you say you're going to charge Y, then you charge Y. And if you're not going to provide something that can be reasonably expected, well, you note in the contract that you're not going to provide that. And then the second sentence here, lawful prosecution of crimes does not constitute initiation of violence. You're agreeing explicitly, right? In the US, we agree implicitly to some level that, well, if I do something wrong, I know I'm going to be punished. Well, rather than just knowing that, rather than accepting that, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to be punished because I did something wrong, here in the Constitution, we're making it explicit that you agree, if you're going to play in this environment that we're going to call EOS, and you're going to interact via smart contracts, you agree that if you break one of those agreements, right, the prosecution of a crime or the commitment of a crime, if you break one of those contracts, there will be a legal process, and you agree to that's not the initiation of violence. You agree that, all right, well, I've considered that idea and I agree. Yeah, it's awesome that that's explicit. And that actually leads to Article 6, which is related. You explicitly agree that penalties for breach of contract may include, but not limited to, fines, loss of account, and other restitution. Well, again, we know, well, if I do something wrong and somebody brings me to a court of law for doing something wrong, well, of course there's going to be fines or restitution of some kind. But we make it explicit here, right? When you play in EOS, you have explicitly agreed that, well, if I do anything, I'm going to be here honestly. I'm going to interact with other people on the platform honestly. And if I don't, I agree that fines and potential loss of account are valid ways to deal with me breaking those rules. So the Constitution and how it was put together and the thought that went into it is just amazing. And this is far from a fully cooked document. There's very active discussion about pieces of the Constitution. But I wanted to introduce the idea that there is one, provide a little bit of context for it, and that'll set the stage for further conversations in the future. I will have the link in the description. I highly recommend you go read this. If you want to look up terms, these terms, don't just assume you understand, like initiation of violence. Don't assume you know what that term means. Go look for, what does that mean in the context of legal philosophy? What does that mean in terms of history, right? Perjury, we kind of like assume we know what perjury means, but go look up a legal definition. When you craft a legal document like this is like forming the United States. When those people sat together in a room and wrote the Constitution, they were defining a country. They were defining the rules of a country. And similarly here, these are people who just, came together because they had to put together this document. And understanding the terms and using terms with precise meanings, it becomes really critical. So I invite you to study this document. You'll run across, what's the other thing I want to point out? The other thing is arbitration. The rules of arbitration, International Chamber of Commerce, maxims of equity. There's a Wikipedia article about this. I'll link that in the description also. But I highly recommend you go read about these things, because when you live in a country that's been around for hundreds of years, the way America, but also European countries in particular, you don't think about, well, how do you design a legal structure? That was done hundreds of years ago, and we just get to live in it. But we're designing it here. We're saying, how are we agreeing to interact? So understanding these things and gaining that knowledge that we're never really taught and we don't really know to study, super, super valuable. So please leave your questions and comments in the comment section below, especially if you go read about these things, maxims for equity and whatnot, and find something interesting that you didn't know. Please share that in the comments. I would love the comments here to be a discussion, a seed of a discussion of this topic. I'm definitely going to be making more screencasts and probably a podcast exclusively focused on this topic of the Constitution and the law of EOS. It's the term that's used actually is governance, and on-chain governance is a huge topic that I've been a massive proponent of for a long time, and EOS gives us a really, really powerful technology and opportunity to really take a good crack at producing a form of governance on-chain that is revolutionary. Hope you enjoyed this video. Leave your comments and likes below, and I look forward to the next video.